anyone who has struggled with a health issue that their doctors just didn't have answers to can understand this next guest. And hopefully, if they're still not feeling well, if you're not still not feeling well, you will learn from her, get inspiration because her resilience, her grit, her desire to feel better led her on a journey that really said no thank you to the answers that the conventional system was giving her, and decided to do her own research, decided to do her own work and figure it out. Her story is incredible, so I can't wait to share it with you. Ashley James is here, and Ashley, welcome to the Delivering Health podcast.
Thank you so much. I'm really excited to be here.
My goodness, when I read your bio, when I read your kind of media kit that I was sent, I was just blown away. It wasn't just that you had one discrete diagnosis or health issue, it was one thing after another.
Hmm.
Just tell people your story.
Absolutely. So I can go all the way back to when I was a kid. Um, I was very energetic and yet I was sick all the time. I'd wake up with a sore throat every morning and it just became my norm. And I was just sort of wiped out, brain fog, exhausted. And this is like kindergarten and the first grade. So even though I had lots of energy, I was struggling with health, but I didn't have the vocabulary to explain it, right? My mom found a naturopathic physician by the name of Dr. Diadamo. He wrote the original book, Eat Right for Your Blood Type. And she took me to him when I was 6, and he looked into my eyes and my ears and my nose and examined my tonsils and adenoids, and he took my blood and said, "You're O blood type. You are allergic to milk, yeast, wheat, and sugar. Stay away from them." And then he gave us some supplements. He had his own compounding supplement pharmacy, if you will, of vitamins and herbs and minerals. And he put us on a diet that now you would call more paleo. So no processed food, no dairy, and it was clean meat and lots of vegetables. And overnight, 24 hours, my sore throats go away. My brain fog melts away. I had to learn how to swallow supplements that we actually, he gave us a powder and we'd have to like put in our own capsules. And I just remember it was one day I was chronically sick and the next day I had vibrant health. And I did not have any sickness until I was 13 and rebelled against this entire system of health because that was what I chose to rebel against at the time, teenagers, and started what I wanted to eat the way my friends ate. My mom would send me to school with like a bag of Brussels sprouts, steamed Brussels
Mhm.
sprouts and a chicken breast. That was her way of packing me a healthy lunch. And of course, a 13-year-old is not going to appreciate that. I would now appreciate a lunch that is so healthy. But back then, I wanted Nutella sandwiches on Wonder white bread, right? That's what my friends were eating. And my mom told me, if you eat that way, you're going to be in a wheelchair in your 30s. And I just didn't want to listen to her. So I started eating the way my friends ate, stopped taking the supplements. And that was right around Halloween. I remember because I ate all the Halloween candy I could get my hands on when I was 13. And I proceeded to have my first infection from Halloween to Christmas. And I was on nonstop antibiotics. And it went from one system of my body to the other. It started in my throat and my lungs. It moved to my gut, and I was a mess. I was an absolute wreck, and I didn't learn then. I had to continue to, um, you know, do the things all my friends did. But I guess I don't know why is it that they could eat that way and not get sick, but I ate that way and got sick. Who knows, right? There's so many factors, and I developed type 2 diabetes, chronic adrenal fatigue, chronic infections, polycystic ovarian syndrome. And after a battery of tests when I was 19, I was told by an endocrinologist that I had infertility and I'd never be able to have kids. She said to me very succinctly, was like, "You will never have kids. Just give up this idea you'll ever have kids. You are infertile." A 19-year-old.
How sad.
And I worked out. I was incredibly athletic. I studied martial arts. I did weightlifting. I did rugby in high school. I biked and rollerbladed everywhere, but my blood sugar was just out of control no matter what I did. And I felt out of control. And I developed this distrust of my body because I kept going from, and this was my mom's solution, was taking me from doctor to doctor, diet to diet, and trying to figure out how to get health, but it was so fractionated, right? People weren't looking at the whole. And
Did you
so
go back to eating how you were eating when you were
no,
younger?
no, this was like I was in full rejection mode as a teenager.
So
But I
did
did go on different diets, and actually I wasn't overweight, but my mom had this unhealthy relation. She was a model, so she had a really unhealthy relationship with
yeah.
food and body image. And so she started putting me on diets. This is just like another layer, is that imagine a 12-year-old who's just going through puberty and is put on a calorie restricted diet. I wasn't overweight, I was athletic, but I was, and that was when I was 12, I wasn't even sick yet. Like I wasn't even,
Yeah.
that was part of my rebellion because she started um, forcing me to go on diets. And so when I was 13, I used food to reject her control over me.
Yeah, that's common in teenagers, especially teenage
Sure.
girls, when you some eating
Right.
disorders. One of the manifestations of trying to control the eating is a
Right.
result of just feeling out of control. It's the
Right.
one thing that they can be in control of.
Yeah, and life felt completely out of control between just puberty hormones, both my parents being very controlling and, struggling in school, struggling with friends. It's a very tumultuous time. And I've done a lot of self-reflection, and part of how I parent now with my son is teaching him, he's 10, and I've always taught him to make food choices and then reflect on how he feels. So once he ate some sugar, I mean, it wasn't just one, it was like several things like candy or something. And then he felt really ill, and we had a whole discussion about this is how choosing that food is how it makes you feel. And do you want to make that choice again? So 9 times out of 10, when he's offered sugar, he says no to it. He's choosing and no one's forcing him to. So it's not something he's going to rebel against, So I'm really happy that I am passing on these strategies to him. And these strategies I had to develop the hard way.
Yeah.
And he's learning in a much more gentle atmosphere. But this is I'm so grateful for my the way I grew up and the struggles I went through because now I help people. And I love that I can take what I've learned and I've turned it into strengths. So I was sick for many years. In my 20s, I moved to the States, and all of a sudden, I had access to these kinds of foods I'd never had access to before in Canada. Fast food wasn't as big of a deal where I lived in Canada, and it was all of a sudden you couldn't not eat fast food. Where I moved to Las Vegas from Toronto, and it was just everywhere. And I was working, sometimes 100 hours a week. So all I did was, eat not even worse food. And I got sicker and sicker and sicker. So I was suffering greatly through my 20s. And I was done. I was done with suffering. And I did enough self reflection to realize that, to separate like, oh, the rejection of what my mom had me go through and go, wow, she actually was right on so many levels. Like her delivery was not great, but
Right.
she was right on so many levels. And so I remember this clearly. My husband and I watched a food documentary back in 2008. It might have been Food Inc. or it might have been Forks Over Knives, but it was right around then when Netflix was first showing these food documentaries. And the person who they were interviewing said he was the original creator of Whole Foods. He said, vote with your fork and shop the perimeter of the grocery store and eat organic. And we thought, well, let's try that. We can do that. So by shopping the perimeter of the grocery store, we're avoiding all the aisles and we stopped eating all the processed food and we only chose organic. And in that first month of just making those changes, so my husband and I stopped eating any kind of eating out and we just cooked our own meals and we just shopped the perimeter. I wasn't even going dairy free at that time, and I knew I should because my body that does not do well on dairy. But we just shopped the perimeter, ate whatever we wanted as long as it was around the perimeter of the grocery store and that it was organic. And my chronic infections that I was on nonstop antibiotics for went away.
Now, I'm not surprised given your experience when you were younger.
Hmm.
What's shocking to me is because you had that medical history that any excellent doctor would have asked questions, and if you and your mom when you were younger to go back and say what happened when you were younger,
Right.
and would have uncovered that. And in
Yeah.
all of these doctor visits, whether it was for diabetes or fertility issues and the other list of complaints and struggles you were having, no doctor did that. No doctor talked
So,
about.
yes, that's a very good question. When I was a child, I saw naturopathic physicians. As a teenager, I started seeing medical doctors, MDs. And again, it's like now that I say it, I'm like, wow, why was I so stupid? Like sometimes we're just really thick-headed until we look back 20 years and go, oh man, like, hello, duh. But that is the difference between seeing an MD and an ND is the quality of questions, the amount of time they spend with you, the amount of investigation, and medical doctors listening to you talk holding their prescription pad, waiting to like, oh, that sounds like I need to fill in this prescription, right?
I've actually had that experience. That's why I went to naturopathic medical school, actually, because I went to a medical doctor in my 20s. He walked in with his prescription pad in his
Yeah,
hand
ready to just second you say something
and
is
was impatient
so.
with my questions. And I wanted to understand what was happening with my body. And
Yep.
I didn't like the service. So I'd heard of Bastyr University. I know you're in the Pacific Northwest. I used to live
Hmm.
up there. And I'd heard of this school. And so I went to their teaching clinic and said, let me see what these folks have to say. And I loved
Hmm.
the experience, changed the whole
Yeah,
trajectory of my
it's
life.
it's totally different. Every doctor is different, just like every person is different. But you need to understand, you as in everyone, that you are the client and you can fire your doctor and you
Yeah.
have the power. But the problem is so many people feel intimidated by their doctor. They feel powerless, and we put a lot of faith and hope that the doctor can fix our problems because it's very, very scary and lonely when you're sick and you don't know what's going on with your body. And we really hope that the doctor is this like Wizard of Oz that can wave a magic wand and solve our problems. And we've been marketed to since we were infants that the mainstream medical allopathic drug-based system is the cure-all, is the solution. Drugs don't cure. There's like just a few drugs that sort of like will kill and it like kill a bacteria, but they don't cure. Drugs don't cure. They manage, right? Your body cures itself. And when we get that philosophy that the body has a God-given ability to heal itself and that we're we're our own worst enemy, and if we can do some slowing down, self reflection, and really take ownership of everything we put in our body is either hurting us or helping us. And everything we do, like simple things like, what do you do first thing in the morning? Are you on your phone? And I'm totally guilty of that sometimes, but are you on your phone? Are you drinking coffee? Are you slamming energy drinks that afternoon? Or are you drinking, some lemon water and taking a shower that's a nice shower, but then you finish it with a cold, to get that.
What is your morning routine like?
So it's changed through the years.
Yeah.
I had chronic adrenal fatigue for so long that I am one of the first things I experience when I wake up is gratitude. And it's not something I ever had to do consciously. It's because I suffered so much. And just to give you a snapshot, in my 20s, I couldn't process human language. Like I couldn't process, like if you talk to me, I auditorily could not understand what you said until about 11 a.m. My cortisol levels, the highest my cortisol levels ever got, and I had that test where you like test it throughout the day.
Yeah.
My
Salivary
yeah,
cortisol. Yeah.
my highest cortisol was an average person's lowest cortisol. So when you're sleeping, that was my highest cortisol. And I found a functional MD who actually she gave up her license when she realized she was just a drug dealer, but she really wanted to help people, so she became a functional doctor and like almost like a functional coach with a doctorate. And she said, wow, the low I've only ever seen one other person with the low cortisol like that. And she goes, that was her when she right after she did the Olympics. She was in the Olympics twice. And both times her cortisol was that low temporarily. But this was my norm, right? I was just
But I've got to believe
of
that that contributing to that had to be more than just diet.
yeah, so nutrient deficiency. So I got on trace minerals and it began to lift within 5 days. Of course, I adjusted my diet because I was working on my diet actually at that point. This was 2011. I've been working on my diet since 2008 and tweaking it, and going, okay, gluten free. Wow, that was a big shift. Dairy free. Wow, that was a big shift. Every time I'd okay, choosing organic. Wow, that was a big shift. So I would play around and tweak
But
my
was
diet.
there a shift in mindset by any chance? Because a lot of the patients that I've worked with and seen who have adrenal, low adrenal function, or they're burnt out, their cortisol's low, or it's dysregulated. They typically, and I don't know if this is you, but type A personality, where they're been under a lot of stress. Maybe it's not because of their personality, but because they've been ill with so many
Mm-hmm,
things,
mm-hmm.
or there's just life situations have come up, death of a loved one,
Right.
loss of a relationship, move to a different town. I mean, there are lots of reasons for chronic stress, but one of the reasons is sometimes people's reaction to stress, instead of just stepping back and allowing the body to recover and rest, is
Right.
to push the pedal to the metal and go even faster and just push on through. Was that your experience at all, or was it
It,
totally different than that?
um, you know, I, I definitely was in survival mode several times throughout my life. And just having um ADHD, being someone who can't sit still. I want to be doing. I want to be, my version of a vacation is like nonstop action, right? So I don't tend to sit down and my default isn't like sitting down and like, chilling out. But I've learned to, because it's so important to disengage and feel what it feels like in your body to not be in fight or flight.
How much of that do you think
And
was a learned behavior and learned response from the way you were raised, in terms of
both my
not sitting
parents,
still? Yeah.
yeah, so both, yeah, absolutely. Both my parents were go, go, go. They both independently started their own businesses, and they're entrepreneurs. They're very successful, and there was no sitting around. I mean, my mom would like on her vacation, she'd go and sunbathe. That was her version of relaxing, or get a massage. But other than that, we were always go, go, go. But my adrenal fatigue lifted within days of adding plant-derived trace minerals to my life. And that just goes to show how, chronically deficient we are. I also had chronic hunger along with the blood sugar swings, and I was just nonstop hunger. And that was more like a pica or like the cribbing, right? Like I just didn't realize that my body was desperate for trace minerals. So when I started taking them, that first day I started taking them, that chronic hunger went away. And then within 5 days, my energy began to lift. And I think with chronic adrenal fatigue, it's not like just one thing, like, oh, just take minerals and that's it. There's so many layers because you have to unfold the behaviors that went into creating it. And
You know,
mine
it's
was so bad, but I
it's
had
so
to,
it's sorry, it's so fascinating to me that the concept of trace minerals. I know the work of Joel Wallach,
yes.
and he was a veterinarian. And I remember 30 years ago now, he was the first one I ever heard start talking about trace minerals. And
Yep.
in veterinary medicine, they're taught that conventional
Right.
veterinary medicine school. Ranchers and folks who deal with the animals, they can't, if they start to get sick, they got to figure out what's going on. They can't just euthanize and start killing their herds,
Right. Right.
and they
Exactly.
understand how important those trace minerals and nutrition are
Mm-hmm.
for health. And essentially, that's what you're saying, is that you were finally able to correct at least the adrenal part of it, simply
Right.
by adding the trace minerals that your body was missing.
So this is a metaphor that came to me, right? I always feel like God is like guiding me sometimes. Um, But here's a metaphor. Imagine your body is like a mansion, and it has an east wing and a west wing and many floors. And there's always sometimes something on fire. Some electrical circuit goes off, and there's always firemen. That's like your immune system have to come in and put out the fire. And then you have construction crew. And the construction crew, wake up one morning and all the lumber got delivered. And I don't know if you've ever seen what a construction uh, what it looks like when they're building like a large apartment complex or something, that they get all the materials delivered and then
Yeah.
they start building, and then you can see the results, and the next day more materials are delivered. And it's a fine balance. Our bodies are always, our whole life, our bodies are breaking down and repairing and hopefully building back stronger, right? However, most of the time, because we don't consciously seek out all the essential nutrients, if you're pounding back a Starbucks for breakfast and you're eating some fries and a burger for lunch, and maybe a steak and maybe you stuck in a salad there for dinner. You're probably not getting, your 16 vitamins, your two essential fatty acids. You're not getting your 60 minerals. And so over time, the construction crew shows up to rebuild those parts of the mansion that, those little burns here and wear and tear there. And some wood got delivered, but no nails. So the body just does what it can do. It kind of MacGyvers it together for a while. But if my adrenals didn't have the raw building blocks, if my body just didn't have the trace minerals, they couldn't function. So I took the trace minerals and I didn't know what to expect. So like I don't even know if I could call it placebo because I took a shot of it. I took a few shots that first day, and then my husband turned to me and looked at me and he said, "It's 2:30 and you haven't eaten a meal yet." And I burst into tears because I had been trapped in a body that was always hungry, that was always seeking food. And I didn't know that by the day one of taking the minerals that I would have such freedom from that experience. And then days later, like I wasn't expecting my adrenal fatigue to lift, my brain fog to go away, like my energy to come back. So I woke up 5 days later at 5:30 in the morning, full of energy, able to communicate with my husband for the first time in like a decade. And so now you talk about my morning routine. Now when I wake up, it's the second my brain turns on, before I open my eyes, it's gratitude. I feel gratitude. I go, and it's so cool that it's like not, it hasn't gotten old yet, but I wake up and I go, I'm fully online. My whole brain is fully online. I jump out of bed and I'm ready to go. And I can take coffee or leave it. I'm not dependent on caffeine. I don't have to have like an energy drink or some kind of stimulus in the afternoon. I do homeschooling. I'm heavily involved in several communities and church communities and volunteer work. And so I am go, go, go for like 12 hours a day. And at 7 at night, I'll be like at choir practice or something with my son. And I feel like it's 11 in the morning. Like I have sustained energy throughout the day. And it's such a gift. Health is such a gift. And it was something that it took a long time to build, to do that self-reflection, to learn from. And yeah, so Dr. Wallach, funny enough, when I was 12 years old, I was in the back of my mom's car and one of her friends had given her his health lecture, Dead Doctors Don't Lie. And she popped it in the tape player and I listened to it and it shaped my life. And I didn't know what his name was.
I
I
remember
just
I listened
knew,
to those tapes too. They were tapes at the
yeah,
time.
there were
I
tapes
remember that. Yeah. Dead
back
doctors
in the
don't
day,
lie.
right? And he said, I grew up on a beef farm in Missouri and we would feed these cattle, we'd feed the calves these pellets, and he would read. He's super smart, man. This guy is like, I mean, I've spent time with him. We traveled together. He mentored me. He taught me, and he is like a savant, like an autistic savant, and
What an
he's
amazing
wicked
opportunity you
smart.
had
Yeah,
to learn
he's
from
so
him.
cool. He's still
Incredible.
alive. Like
Yeah.
the dude's still kicking, and he's well into his 90s, and he's really awesome. So he as a kid read the ingredients in the calf pellets that they to this day they feed this to your kettle, that to the beef you eat on your plate. And he starts reading and he goes calcium, magnesium, and he's listing off all these minerals and all these vitamins. And he goes, "Hey, Dad, why do we give this to the calves to keep them healthy, but we don't give them to ourselves?" And his dad didn't, have an answer for
Great
him.
question.
And so he started to eat the calf pellets and he got an eye twitch to go away because he'd read that magnesium deficiency is muscle twitches or cramps,
Yeah.
and his muscle cramps went away. But so he was eating calf pellets he was supplementing back then as a kid. And when he went on to become a large animal vet and a research scientist and a pathologist and then a naturopathic physician, and all the research he did, he kind of uncovered these really interesting finds, like many birth defects are nutrient deficiencies. Zinc deficiency at conception is Down syndrome, according to Dr. Wallach. And selenium deficiency, you can develop selenium deficiency. Sorry, you can develop muscular dystrophy or cystic fibrosis from selenium deficiency. Um, and that's just only a few
Yeah, the whole
nutrients.
the Down syndrome statement, I'm scratching my head with. I can't wrap my head around that because
Yeah,
there's
he
a
explains
chromosome
it.
there. Try
Yep, he
trisomy
explains it.
21. I'm not
Yep, he
sure how that
explains
works,
that
and I'd have to
at
see the
conception.
research.
Yep, you can
Yeah,
absolutely go into it. But I talked to another doctor about it, and he goes, "Oh yeah, that makes sense because zinc plays a role in DNA synthesis." Da 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 da.
replication. Yeah,
But
zinc
yeah,
fingers
so
and yeah, and DNA.
but
Yeah,
this is what he was able to do working as a
interesting.
animal scientist before he and an animal doctor before he became a naturopathic physician. But those things are baked into the cake, like nutrient deficiencies during utero are baked into the cake. But so many illnesses that we're told these days, oh, it's just because of your age, it's just because you're a man, it's just because you're a woman, it's just because you're in your
Not
50s.
true.
It's just
No
this
way.
that's such a cop out.
Yep.
And so if any MD says, you can't do this or you can't heal because of this. Like, you know what it really gets MDs angry is talking about healing osteoarthritis. And they just get downright angry. Yo, you can't regrow cartilage. Once you lose that cartilage, you can't regrow it. I'm like, I've I've seen people regrow their cartilage.
Same with
And
bones. I mean, they
yeah,
know there's nothing but drugs to that can improve bone
right,
density and maintain bone strength, and that's just not what the research shows.
right.
I mean, it's kind of like asking an electrician what's the best way to rebuild your engine on your car. Medical doctors are not trained in nutritional medicine. They're not trained in
Hmm.
nutrition. I mean, most of them in their schooling are getting, probably 15 hours or less at best of any nutritional education, let alone looking at the pharmacology of micronutrients and
Right.
integrating biochemistry and nutritional medicine into clinical rotations and clinical practice. And so, if you want to understand really how nutrients are used in your own body, how people can use them to heal and to get stronger, you got to talk to people who specialize in that. You got to talk to people like you who have been through this, who have made a life and a career out of learning this and helping to educate people, naturopathic doctors, myself and others, people who may have made this a career and a study.
There's a disconnect. There's a disconnect that is cultural, and I think it's partly intentional because we can look back at, I mean, examine your belief system. I use this as an example. When I was a kid, they had these commercials for, Tony the Tiger and Snap Crackle Pop. And, you could say all these, key phrases, and you have these images of these really friendly, loving cartoon characters that make you trust, like Count Chocula and the Ronald McDonald, right? So what we don't get, because we think it's innocent and fun, oh, it's just kid stuff, innocent and fun. Well, these food companies, let's just go back and look at this for a sec. Um, do you remember? And most listeners, if you're younger, you're not going to know this. So a little fun history. Um, you know, 70-ish years ago, maybe 80 years ago, only men smoked. Largely women did not smoke cigarettes. And Edward Bernays, who is like the father of modern marketing and very manipulative PR marketing, was hired to help the tobacco companies sell more tobacco. And he figured out that if you got women thinking it was sexy, cool, a symbol of independence and everything that women really wanted at the time, then they would smoke. So at the time, everyone looked at smoking as like the villains, like all the old westerns, only the villains smoked and that kind of stuff. And then all of a sudden, they had women in Hollywood smoking, and this was part of the PR, right? Well, I was raised I'm 45, so I was raised in an era in the 80s where people smoked, and it was a cultural, right? Women and men smoked, everyone smoked. And that was as a result of the marketing that took place and made it look sexy, cool, whatever. Sometime between the 80s and the 90s, everyone went, well, you know what? This lung cancer thing, maybe
Not
maybe
so
we should
cool.
not. Not so cool. So I remember I'm growing up in Canada. I remember the tobacco companies would the De Maurier would pay for millions of dollars would pay for all the firework displays throughout the summer, and then all of a sudden it was illegal for cigarette companies to advertise. That was, trying to take them down a notch, right? And all the firework displays went away. And as they took away all the marketing and they started doing more like health campaigns, like, hey, here's why not to start and here's how to quit, obviously the tobacco companies' profits went down. Well, they'll fight tooth and nail. So here's what they did. They bought food
Food
companies.
companies. Yep.
When you and I were kids, there was very little processed food. Now, people mostly eat processed food or ultra processed food and eat very little real food,
In
right?
America, the 70% of calories in the US diet is ultra processed foods now.
And it's higher for children.
Yeah.
It is in the like 90% of calories come from processed food for children. And now kids will only eat like mac and cheese and hot dogs or whatever, or like chicken nuggies, and they're not going to eat a piece of broccoli, right? Because and so we with ultra processed food, there's MSG. There are food scientists. I've actually interviewed a food scientist who talks about how their whole purpose is just like the cigarette companies figure out how to make the cigarettes the most addictive, most of the
Yeah.
flavor and the experience of the cigarette, so be the most, addictive. Well, they do the same with food, right? And so
Have you
you're
read the book Ultra Processed People? You know
no,
that.
but it sounds
It's a
great.
phenomenal book. Goes through the whole history of ultra processed
I
food.
I that sounds great. I'm totally gonna read it. I love the book Fast Food Genocide by Dr. Joel Furman.
Oh, I don't know that. I got
If
to write that
you
down.
haven't, I had him on my show for that one. And it was a like honestly, everyone should read it. It was an eye opener. I thought I was like really healthy until I read that book, and he's like pointing out where there's things even in my diet where I'm like, wow, I should really limit that. But he talks about some interesting stuff like and what I love about Dr. Joel Furman is he, like any good doctor is going to take the latest science and like back it up, right? So he's pointing to the science, and he uncovered some real things that are pretty interesting to me. Every time you take antibiotics, you substantially increase your chances of one day getting cancer. And since 1 in 3 people in America will have a cancer diagnosis in their lifetime, this is doubly important that we need to prevent ever getting to that point. Like we need to prevent infection, right?
Well,
And we need to have
and it wipes out your gut microbiome, which is
right,
the mechanism behind that increase in cancer. And
exactly.
how do you get a healthy gut microbiome back? You eat whole foods, real
Exactly.
whole foods.
Real single ingredient. When I first learned about Whole Foods, I guess I was confused, and someone said it really clearly. It's a single ingredient. It doesn't require a label, ingredient, broccoli, right? It doesn't require a label. It also doesn't have any commercials telling you to eat it. So if you're the
Right.
food,
Good
if the
point.
food on your plate had a commercial, has a marketing team, has food scientists, you should not eat it because there was zero people on that team going, hey, how do we make this really healthy for the people who are eating it? How do we like prevent disease? No one's doing that. Everyone's going, what can we do to make this so delicious? We
Yeah.
shoot up the dopamine and they're going to want to go back to it. It's going to be the more processed food is, the less nutrients that
So,
are in
so
the food.
let me ask you your some tips then for me too, but for people listening, because well, eating a whole foods diet, as we know, is more time consuming if you're preparing things from scratch.
Right.
That's one of the challenges that people have. These ultra processed foods also are a lot less expensive in terms of calorie for calorie. They're a
I
lot
would
more
I would
expensive. But
disagree with you. Like,
okay, so let's not
if
debate
it
the costs because
yeah, no,
the
because you
yeah,
can make it be super affordable. And I
right.
had this well, Dr. Molly Niedermeyer, she
Oh, I know
said,
Molly. Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. She was
Yeah.
my doctor back when I was pregnant with my son. And I had her on my show. She's amazing. And she is really big into helping the low income communities. And so she has like free clinic days and just discounted supplements, and she does a lot for the community. And she says, "Listen, you don't you tell me you can't afford to eat healthy. Here's how you eat healthy." She goes, rice and beans,
Yep.
it's for, like pound for pound is going to be the cheapest source of protein, and you're getting all your fiber, and you're getting all that fiber for your gut bacteria. And then she goes, if you can't even afford healthy like produce, she goes, get a kiddie pool on your, like, if you live in an apartment, get a kiddie pool, fill it with dirt, grow some kale. Like, just there's so many ways that we can get creative. Or if you have a plot that you can grow, get a bunch of other friends, and like you grow broccoli, they grow onions, the other one of them grows kale, or the other one grows tomato, right? And then you all exchange, right?
Yeah.
So
When I
there's
lived in
ways we can get creative.
when I lived in Seattle, I grew most of my own produce. It's amazing up there.
Yes.
In terms of what I was wanting to talk about as well is the time. So it
Hmm.
can take, be more
Hmm.
time consuming. So do you have some practical tips for
Yeah.
people of how they can eat healthier?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. It's funny because I don't see it as time consuming because I love cooking. Um, so you want to have an instant pot, or some kind of electric pressure cooker. That is going to make your life super easy. Back in when we had the previous house we were in, I had a bigger kitchen space, so I had three instant pots lined up, and most of our meals came from these three instant pots. I would choose one starch. So a starch looks like potatoes, sweet potatoes or yams, brown rice, quinoa, buckwheat. There's all different kinds that you can choose from. So I'd make that. The second one would have some kind of lentil or legumes. So black beans, or there's black lentils, there's green lentils, there's red lentils, and you can do spices. So I could have a Mexican theme, or an Asian theme, or an Italian theme, just based on the spice blends that I chose. I could add a bit of coconut milk and do like a curry, or like a tomato sauce in it. And then the third one would be a non-starchy vegetable. So just varieties of spice of life. You want to eat from the rainbow. So we would choose different vegetables, they're either that are in season, and either we'd go to the local grocery store, or we'd get a box delivered, or our friend's garden or our garden. There's also a discount, really cool, called JD's Market up in Linwood, and they'll have organic produce that's like, about to turn, still good to eat, but like, you better eat it soon. And it'll be like $1 a bag of whatever, asparagus or whatever. And it's usually stuff that they get from Costco, or other places that are just about to turn. And then you could save so much money. It's ridiculous. And so, yeah, so I would make those three, and then sometimes I'd do a sauce on top, or we would just do like a pico de gallo, and we would make bowls. And now I do something very similar. I just don't have room for three instant pots, but I do have a vegetable steamer, or I'll just saute some vegetables, or I'll bake the asparagus or something. So you can bake vegetables, but I'll just throw it in those devices. And you can prep in advance. Actually, my friend just showed me this really interesting. I never thought of this. She takes all her potatoes, her like yellow potatoes, for example, and she peels them all. She puts them in a big container of water and puts them in the fridge. If they're in water, they won't oxidize. And then anytime she's cooking, she'll just grab a few potatoes that are already peeled, and then she can either put them in the instant pot with a roast, and cut up an onion and put that in there, and then boom, you've got dinner. Put in a few carrots in there too. Or you can cut up the potatoes and make like a hash. You can put them, saute
Many
them,
things
or
to
bake
do.
them.
Yeah.
I don't cook with oil, and I don't recommend anyone ever cook with oil. And we probably don't have enough time to go into that one, but I'll just leave you on a cliffhanger there. And you can search my website if you want to learn more about the oil free, or just like, Google it and find out for yourself why we shouldn't be cooking with oil. Any oil. Not There's no such thing as healthy oil when it comes to heat, when it comes to cooking. So you can either do oil free cooking, or like you just add a little bit of water every time you saute, and it turns out just the same. We don't need oil. If you use animal products, you could
And
do
you help
ghee or
people in your work, you help people navigate this and
yeah,
consult with them and counsel them and give them practical advice and share your
yeah.
experience and your understanding. Tell people about your company and what you do and how they can learn more and get in touch with you.
Yeah, absolutely. So all the tips around making eating whole foods easy is in my book. I wrote a book last year. It's called Addicted to Wellness, And it's a workbook. So you're going to do a lot of reflection and it's going to draw out of you and you're going to get inspiration, motivation, and you're going to get to practice new and implement new health habits in a way that's structured so that it becomes easy and effortless because we can turn that mechanism in our brain that is addictive, right? Like eating some kind of highly processed food triggers our dopamine. We can do the same with health. People get high off of eating healthy food and the results it gives them. People get high off of like going to the gym and having a really good workout. And so we can take the same thing that kind of can steer us in the wrong direction in life, like going after like street drugs and porn and whatever. We can take that same part of the brain and we can become addicted to healthy stuff. So you can go to learntruehealth.com. That's my website. And you can get a third of my book for free just by signing up for the newsletter. Or you can purchase the physical copy if you're someone like me that likes to, hold the book. And I made it in large print. So it's just easy to fill out. And I have a podcast. I've interviewed over 500 health experts like yourself. And my goal, because I suffered for so many years and then finally figured out how to heal my body and worked with the right, experts to learn how to do that. Um, I started in 2011, then turning around and working with clients to help them get their health back. And that's why I started the podcast when I realized that it people are seeking this information and people were like me crying at night, praying for an answer and suffering and and that's why I do what I do so that I can help those to stop the needless suffering. It's just needless. We don't need to suffer this way, but we've been trained since birth to trust the wrong system. And so we need to ask the right questions. And I know your audience is already in the right place because if you're here listening to podcasts like this, then you are already on the journey of seeking answers. So good for you because so many people don't even know to like go look up a podcast and to start learning. So you're already on the path to healing and just keep seeking information, keep implementing, keep trying these, when you hear a health tip, try it and check in with yourself, feel how you feel, and then keep doing it. And that's why my book helps with that because you can journal and then self-reflect and go, oh yeah, wow, that is really helping me.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. Addicted to health,
Yeah. Addicted to wellness.
addicted to wellness.
That's my
Sorry,
book. Addicted. No, no, it's fine.
addicted
It's
to
addicted to
wellness.
wellness. And my website's learntruehealth.com.
LearnTrueHealth.com. Everybody should check that out. And not only are you, incredibly articulate in the way that you are able to communicate everything that you've learned over these decades, but your story is so compelling and so complicated in some ways in terms of your history and what you've been through, but also so elegantly simple that it's really in some ways back to the basics
Yes.
of what we all were taught when we were little, and that is, eat healthy. And but how to do that? People have lost that skill. Culture, societally, we've lost that
Exactly.
ability, the knowledge to even understand what that looks like. So your book, your website, you working with you, helping people get back on track, is an incredible gift to the world. So thank you for doing that, and thank you for being here. I learned a lot, and I loved spending some time with you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And I loved our interview together. It was 548, episode 548, and I just published it. Um, and I absolutely adore what you're doing, and I think it is saving lives. So equally thank you for the work you're doing.
We're on the same page for sure. It's a mutual admiration society because I'm loving what you're doing too. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.